Morning, everybody. I'd like to call this meeting to order. It is 9 a.m. sharp, right on the dot. And I forgot to turn my phone off. Sorry. That's somebody calling me. Sorry, everybody. All right. Now that we've started that off on a good foot, in true spirit of reconciliation, I'd like to acknowledge all those that call this land home now and for thousands of years in the past. May we respect each other and find understanding together and recognize the benefits that this land provides for all of us. Moving on, adoption of the agenda. I'm sure you've all had a chance to review it. Are there any additions or amendments required? Klaus?
I'll move the agenda as presented.
Klaus has moved the agenda as presented. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? That is carried. Item C, adoption of the minutes. County Council minutes from June 20th, 2024. Are there any additions or amendments required? Mark?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd move the adoption of the minutes of the council meeting of June 20th, 2024.
Okay, Mark has moved for the adoption of the minutes as presented. Any further discussion? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Anybody opposed? That is carried. Item D, subdivision applications. Hillary, you're up very quickly today. I guess I should recognize both of you. Sorry about that, Steve. Hillary and Steve, you're up very quickly today.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We just have one subdivision application for County Council acting as the subdivision authority to consider today. And it is the subdivision of the Northeast 3920 west of the 4th. This would be the first parcel out of the quarter section. The applicant is requesting that a 4.21 acre existing farmstead be subdivided out from the quarter section, which is 150 acres in size. This particular application, as noted in the report that Steve has drafted, does not meet all of the county's subdivision criteria, as it is across the road from an existing confined feeding operation. But as you are aware from our other subdivisions in the past, there are some considerations with regards to the age of the yard that Steve will detail out in his report. And I will pass it off to Steve now for the comments and the recommendation.
Good morning, everyone. This, Mr. Chair, this first application in front of you here, I guess the only one for today, is dealing with what's classified as the first subdivision out of the core sections for farmstead. It is noted that, and you can see in the map there is a 9.74 acre title in the very northwest corner. That is a separate title. That is a title that was created by the government as part of the 8 Mile Lake drainage area, and has been in existence for so long. There's not even a plan that we can find for it. Anyways, that is in accordance with subdivision policies. As a government subdivision, it does not preclude the landowner from subdividing themselves because they didn't institute or do that subdivision, and it's not for their own purpose. So with that, the application is classified as the farmstead for subdivision out of the quarter section for the landowner. They're subdividing a portion of the yard that's there. They do have a pivot on this land, so the configuration of the lot is kind of, the boundary is jogging around and account for the pivot on the land. And it's following just outside the wheel tracks of the pivot. There is where you can see that dugout in the very southwest corner there, Hillary's showing, that is being filled in, and that dugout is in the process of being removed, so it won't be there anymore. And they've reclaimed that land as part of the agricultural land under the pivot. So that kind of angle there on the southwest is to account for the wheel track of where the pivot that's been installed to the quarter section falls. So the yard itself will be the 4.21 acres. There is a older home from the 1940s, which is the original farmhouse, up on the northern portion. And then at the south end, there's a secondary farmhouse that was constructed in the late 60s. So both of those yards do have a unit from the water co-op that's fed into their own private cistern, and then each has its own private sewage system. One's a mound, one's a subsurface field system, and those will remain within the confines of the property once subdivided. So as mentioned, as Hillary mentioned, this application, there is a confined feeding operation across the road. They originally received a permit back in 1994 from the county to establish there a beef cow and feeder calf operation. So that operation with the 94 permit issued by the county was prior to the 1997 minimum distance separation rule come into effect. So in accordance with the subdivision policies you have in your land use bylaw, due to both the CFO being established there prior to there being any minimum distance separation, and then also for this yard itself, with the residences being there in the 1940s and the late 1960s, also established both prior to the feedlot and the minimum distance separation, you do have the policy applicable that the subdivision authority can approve the subdivision for the owner and waive what would normally be applied the MDS requirement, which is outlined in Part 8, Section 2, Subsection 3 of the subdivision criteria of your bylaw. So part of the referral, there is a small portion up at the north end that's identified to be taken by the future Canamex when and if wherever that happens. As part of the circulation here, the application was referred to Alberta Transportation because that Alberta Transportation has no issues with the subdivision or does not object to it from going forward. As well as, in addition to that, there was no other special land considerations. Since I did send the package out to you, AgKnow Gas has requested a utility easement that is covered off in one of the conditions, number 4, that was presented in the draft resolution that came out, that can be captured. Other than that, there were no other objections or concerns received on the application. With the consideration of the MDS and that waiver requirement due to the history of the yard, I have recommended approval to you to approve the 4.21 acre yard subdivision, and it would just be on the 3 conditions there. Taxes are paid up to date, development agreements entered into if required, that their final plan of survey is submitted based on any approval received, and then that 4th would be the easement by the utility companies, which would cover off the AgKnow Gas request.
Thank you, Steve. Any questions from the? Or?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just one, you said there's 2 houses on the subdivision?
Yeah, and,
Yeah.
kind of in a smaller, older one at the north end.
And are they both on the same septic field?
No, they'll have their own,
Okay.
yeah. The north one's on a mound, just to, I think, the northwest side of the, yeah, where it says septic tank, that's actually the mound. That's not a tank, that's the mound system. And then the southern one has its own field there, so.
Any further questions? How would you like to proceed? Claude?
I've never heard of that. What is a mound system?
A mound system, is where the due to the soil or subsurface traits present, whether there's a high water table or there's too much clay underneath or that sort of thing, that nor the traditional system that in the ground goes into the soil, if you've got good sandy loam, that type of thing, that the system is elevated, so it sits more like on top of the land, with the gravel bed underneath, that sort of thing with that. And then they mound over, so it's kind of above the land rather than below. And then it's in a tube-based kind of thing, and then they mound over with the soil and stuff on top, whatever like that. So instead of being in the ground, it's a raised bed, whatever, and it's obviously a mound because it's built above, so they refer to it as a mound system, whatever. So it's just a different design that they have to kind of create that separation layer. If it's not below in the soil, that they build it up in order to create that.
So they've got a pump system that pumps in the ground.
Not necessarily. It can be either way. It just depends on the grade. So you could have like a pump type system, or it can just be gravity fed also.
Claus?
Okay, then I'll move that subdivision application 2024-0-081 be approved, subject to the waiver from the MDS being granted and the conditions as outlined in the draft resolution.
Thank you, Claus. Mr. Claus has moved that subdivision application 2024-0-081 be approved subject to a waiver of the MDS being granted and the conditions outlined in the draft resolution. Are there any further questions? Call for the vote. All in favor? Anybody opposed? That is carried. On to department reports. Development infrastructure, bylaw 24-012, redesignation of plan 1410983.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we have one application in to rezone a property from an existing direct control to another direct control, which I will explain. So the application in question is just on the in-between highways 845 and Highway 4. If you can see on the aerial photo that I have up, it's the parcel that is out, in that gray shaded area. The original owners of this property had wanted to construct a building to facilitate their business, but it was thought that this particular location was not suitable for a full-blown rezoning to, say, a rural general industrial district, which would allow for a number of uses which could have negative impacts to the adjacent country residential area. So at that time, they had applied and were successful in obtaining a direct control district that would allow for a trucking company to operate off of that parcel, and that is the existing direct control that sits for that property today. That property has recently sold, and the new owners wish to desire to have a different type of business on the property. They don't want to. They don't run a trucking business. What they would like to have is a equipment, machinery, and equipment sales, service, and rental business on this particular property. And in discussions with them, it was determined that, once again, it might not be suitable to have, say, a rural general industrial here, as just given the kind of somewhat residential character of this particular stretch of road. So they have applied for a new direct control district that would allow for that machinery and equipment sales, service, and rental. And they have also asked to be allowed to have a dwelling on there, so kind of in the opportunity to have an enhanced home business type situation on this particular property. And given that this property is 10 acres in size, they've also requested that they be able to subdivide, which we have embedded into that direct control. So that is the application that is before you for first reading. We have circulated this particular application to the county departments and external agencies for review and comment. And at the time of the public hearing, I'll go through the considerations with regards to the county's municipal development plan, commercial industrial land use strategy, and any comments that we receive as with regards to the circulation. Just as a note, I do know that the applicant has talked to all the property owners along this stretch of road, and I do believe he's received a positive response from all of them with regards to the type of business that he would like to operate on this parcel. But that will probably come forward at the time of the public hearing, which I anticipate being on August the 1st. So with that, given that this is just first reading of the bylaw, it's just some context for understanding what the application is and why it's going from one direct control district to another. I have recommended that first reading of this bylaw be approved by County Council so we can proceed with the public hearing. Back to you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Laura. Any questions? Laura?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So when it was originally subdivided to build the shop on it, they wanted to build a residence there and we didn't allow them. So this is a fairly significant change.
Yeah.
And to subdivide it is a fairly significant change then as well. But you're okay with that? I'm kind of lost on this one because we're kind of changing our minds.
Thank you, Councillor Hickey, through the chair. In looking at over time, I mean, the original application was approved in 10 years ago, I would say in 2013 or 2014. In terms of what they want to use the parcel for, in terms of how we look at home-based businesses and the opportunities that parcels can have in the county, I don't see a large detriment to having a residence on this parcel with the limited uses that they're proposed. And the same would go with regards to a subdivision. It's obviously council's discretion at the time of the second reading. If council decides they don't want to allow for a subdivision of this parcel, they can strip that out of the bylaw. That is 100% council's prerogative to be able to do so. That was just the conversations with the applicant in looking at the area, looking at the proposed uses they've supplied within the direct control. I didn't have a concern with it at that time.
Thank you. Any further questions? Mark?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to move that bylaw 24-012 be read a first time.
Thank you, Mark. Mark has moved that bylaw 24-012 be read a first time. Any further comments or questions? I'll call for the vote. Those in favor? Anybody opposed? That is carried.
Thank you.
Thank you, Hillary. We are on to E2.1, Division 5. Mr. Beck, good morning.
Good morning, Council. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, following the June 20th, 2024 Council meeting, we received Division 5 Councillor Eric Van Essen's resignation. As per the MGA, that was made effective immediately. Councillor Van Essen had to resign due to moving out of division, so I'd love to take this opportunity to thank him for his service during my time with Lethbridge County. He was a wonderful advocate for his division and for Lethbridge County residents overall, so he will be missed, and we really appreciate his time on council. Due to his resignation, the Division 5 councillor spot is vacant, and council will need to determine if a by-election will be held to fill the vacant spot on council. It's administration's recommendation that a by-election be set for Division 5 on Monday, September 9th. This will allow us to have adequate time with a Division 5 councillor on council prior to the next election cycle that occurs in 2025. If council determines that, then we would have some subsequent recommendations based on the by-election campaign period as well as the returning officers, but we would turn it back to council for deliberation on whether a by-election would be held.
Thank you, Cole. Any questions, comments? Laura?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So roughly what would it cost to run a by-election?
We estimate, it will depend on whether we have multiple candidates run in that division. We estimate that it could be upwards of $5,000 based on advertising, staffing. That did include, when we look at the numbers for the last election, that does include the rental of electronic voting machines, which we are unclear. I know in the next election, those won't be allowed to be used. And I'm not sure when that legislation went through with the government, whether there was a clause in there, whether that immediately went into assent or or there was something about the transition period. So it could be upwards of around $5,000, and it could be less if we can't rent voting machines, and if somebody runs in Division 5 uncontested.
I see Candace has. Okay. Any other questions, comments? How do we want to proceed? Lauren?
So I do see some advantage in having a by-election, but I also figure it's for a very limited time, so I'm really struggling to get the value out of it, so, I'm not sure unless I was overly convinced I would be in favor of it.
Got Mark and then Klaus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I see a benefit to it. Just the fact that I know when we first came on council, it takes a while to get up to speed. So I think this gives whoever runs or gets the position, that's a year before we go into the next election cycle. So and then it fills that seat too. So we've got a full slate on our council. But I think the biggest benefit is just giving that councillor that year to kind of climatize and understand how things work, because it takes quite a while to sort things out in your mind when you're running and understand what your role is and how you fit in. So I think the cost isn't a concern to me. Time-wise, it's 30% of the time. I mean, it's a third of what our term is anyway, so it's still a substantial amount. It's not. So I don't have an issue. I fully support it.
Klaus?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree with Mark. I think that we should have the by-election, and I think that with saving some money too, we have the returning officers right in-house here, so I think that makes a difference, because in the past, we've had it that we had outside help, and that would probably make it a lot more expensive. But further than that, I agree that we should probably just have it. Yeah.
Morris?
Yeah, yeah, my opinion is too, we should have a by-election, because I think that division has that right to have a rep from that area.
Okay. How would you like to proceed? Mark?
I'd like to move that a by-election be set for Division 5 on Monday, September 9th, 2024.
Are we wanting these done individually? Okay. Mark has moved that by-election be set for Division 5 on Monday, September 9th, 2024. Any further discussion? Call for the vote. Oh, sorry.
You said September the what?
9th.
The night, and it cannot be speeded up a little bit, or?
I would,
Like, this is just the beginning of July, I thought maybe a bit month.
I would yield to administration on that. I think there's set timelines that we have to do this, right?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we worked backwards. So if we set the election for September 9th, then the campaign period would start for July 5th. So we've worked backwards that if we get a resolution today from council, that's the direction we're going, that's the earliest time that election can occur. And that would give them roughly a year on council.
Okay, thank you. All right, Mark has made a motion that the by-election be set for December 5th on Monday, September 9th, 2024. You have further comment? Okay. I'll call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Klaus?
I'll move the second one. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll move that council sets the campaign period for the by-election for Division 5 to begin on July 5th, 2024.
Seeing here, I was just going to read that for you. All right. Klaus has moved the council set the campaign period for the by-election for Division 5 to begin on July 5th, 2024. Any discussion? Call for the vote. Those in favor? Anybody opposed? That is carried. We've got one more resolution that needs to be dealt with. How do you want to proceed? Klaus?
Nobody else wants to, well, I guess I'll do that. I don't know. That Candace Robson be appointed as returning officers, and that Maddie Watson will be appointed as substitute returning officer.
Thank you, Klaus. Klaus has moved that Candace Robson be appointed as a returning officer, and then Matty Watson be appointed as substitute returning officer. Any discussion? Call for the vote. Those in favor? Anybody opposed? That is carried. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To Councillor Hickey's point, and I think we should maybe just capture this in a resolution as well, if we could get support from council to fund the by-election through council reserve. We do put funds annually into that reserve for the cycle election. So there is funding technically in the budget for us to use, but we would have to probably top that up. If it costs us a few $1,000s, we'll have to top that up in the 2025 budget. So if we could get a motion and resolution to use the county council reserve to fund the by-election, I think that'll just be added to the budget in 25.
Any question? Lauren?
The county council reserve fund, or is that the right name?
I think it's built into the council discretionary fund.
Oh,
So we, within the annual budget, there's about just over 6,000 that gets transferred into that reserve annually to fund future elections. So, there is some funds there that can help offset the cost associated with the election.
so the annual the annual contributions go into that discretionary account? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I would move that the funds for the by-election be withdrawn from the county council discretionary reserve account.
Thank you, Lauren. Not sure I can repeat that. Lauren has moved that the expenses for the election be taken out of the county council discretionary reserve fund. Okay. Any further discussion? Call for the vote. Those in favor? That is carried. Oh, sorry, opposed? Should do the same thing. I know nobody opposed. That is carried. All right, on to E 2.2, AgKnow request for funding.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So AgKnow, which came into existence in 2019 following an ASB resolution aimed to address mental health on farms and ranches across Alberta, is seeking financial assistance to help bridge them between grant funding. I'm not intimately familiar with this program. The letter that came through was addressed to Councillor Vanderveen, and he may have some more information. We have provided a recommendation to council that council support a one-time donation to AgKnow in the amount of $1,000 in accordance with the donations policy 161. There is language in that policy that allows council to use their discretion to amend that amount. Our Ag Service Department has requested as an alternative consideration a one-time approval of a donation in the amount of $2,000 to AgKnow to match Wheatland County's contribution, which may help bolster further contributions from other rural municipalities across Alberta. So those are the two potential recommendations put forward to council. Our Ag Services Department speaks very highly of this program and the work that they do, but I would maybe ask if Councillor Vanderveen or others have more intimate knowledge and awareness being on the Ag Service Board during that time.
Okay, thank you, CEO Cole. I don't know why it was addressed to me, probably because I'm the chair of the Agriculture Service Board, but I think it should have came to council itself, and it was because we supported this at the Agriculture Service Board, and I think that's why it came to me, but that's the only reason I can see for that.
Any other further comments? I'd like to just chime in on this. Mental health is something that is extraordinarily important, and as we're seeing, as time goes on, more and more focus has been put on that, and the agricultural industry as a whole has been one that traditionally has suffered in silence, shall we say. The old comment of just cowboy up and make it work has been the adage in the past, and to a certain extent sometimes fairly unsuccessfully. And I see great value in organizations that are trying to bring focus to that and bring some assistance to anybody in the ag industry that may be struggling with mental health. So my personal opinion is that I think this is a very good thing. So, but I'll leave it out to council. How would you like to proceed? Cole?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I could just add, that there is adequate funding in the Ag Services Reserve to support this initiative in whatever direction that council chooses to go.
Right. There are two options presented to us. One is a one-time donation of $1,000, and one is a donation of $2,000, which would match Wheatland County's contribution from the Ag Services Reserve. Any appetite from the council? Klaus?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I'll make a recommendation that is here, and that county council provide a one-time donation to AgKnow in the amount of $1,000 in accordance with our donations policy 161.
All right, Klaus has made a motion to provide a one-time donation of $1,000 to AgKnow from the Agriculture Services Board Reserve Fund. Any further questions? Call for the vote. Those in favor? Anybody opposed? That is carried. E3.1, Community Futures Business Loan Request. Welcome, Jennifer.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Council. So we received a request from Community Futures for a business loan application. The county is a partner on this program, and they're looking for some financial support on the interest portion of the application for a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu franchise that is moving from the city into the county. Just for a little history on the program itself, for any council members who don't recall, so in 2018, Lethbridge County partnered with Community Futures, Lethbridge Region on a business improvement loan program. So the program offers opportunity for eligible Lethbridge County businesses to apply for interest-free loans of up to $2,000 for improvements or upgrades to their business. And the county supports this by covering the interest on that loan. So the loan program itself is actually administered and applied for through the Community Futures. Businesses can apply for funding to support storefront improvements, signage, windows, equipment, etc. Again, the maximum loan amount is $10,000 with the interest portion of approximately $1,500, could be more, could be less, that the county would pay upfront on the loan, which is amortized to a maximum of 36 months. So the current rate that Community Futures provided was 8.75% on the loan. This is the first application the county has actually received since 2001, and the last business loan issued was by the same applicant, oddly enough, but they had moved back to the city, I guess is my understanding, and are now wanting to be back within the county. So administration was just bringing forward a recommendation that Community Futures loan application for the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu franchise fund the loan interest amount to the county's 2024 operating budget. There is funds that were maintained within an economic development portion of the budget that could be utilized for this.
Thank you, Jen. Questions? Lauren?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the $789.56 is for all 3 years of the loan, or is that per year?
That is my understanding. That was the number that was provided by Community Futures, so I think that is the total. That's the total they provided us. So I think if we, as the county, give a one lump sum payment for the interest.
I can
So
offer
it's-
some insight on that if you wish.
Go ahead.
Yeah, the 780 would be basically the first year, the total amount of the interest, because the loan is paid off over the period of time, would be right around $1,500 that's the total cost for the 3 years.
So it's a little different than what it says here.
I think the agreement was up to 1,500, and I think this loan amount is.
Right, correct. So the 1,500 is an approximate, yeah. Go ahead, Klaus.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, it's up to $1,500, but why are we at an 8.75% interest?
That's the community futures agreement I could budget. It's probably prime plus something, I'm guessing.
And I can, again, sorry, being the chair of this, but I'm also the chair of Community Futures, so I can offer some insight on this, and I feel like I'm kind of caught between two spaces here at this particular point. But the 8.7% interest rate is because Community Futures is a non-traditional lender, so they tend to lend out funds to people that are not bankable. So the interest rate that is charged by Community Futures is set at a higher rate than the bank. And the whole goal of Community Futures is to get people that are not bankable into a situation where they're bankable. Programs like this, business improvement loans, are designed for people that may be bankable, but it's a small amount that the banks don't necessarily want to look at. The 8.7% interest rate is something that is done by resolution through Community Futures on an annual basis, and it is based on what the current business environment for bank rates are with a premium. So, follow-up?
So, yes, with that said, aren't we better off just to give a donation than that we spend that kind of money and that there's that much interest on that?
Except that's not how the program's set up.
Okay, but I mean, does it have to be that way? Isn't it easier if we just go the easy route and don't have to pay the $8.75?
Well, if we wanted to change the program, I guess we could, but currently the program in place, if I understand it, is that if an applicant comes forward, the county pays the interest.
That's correct.
Yeah.
I understand.
Any further questions? How would you like to proceed? Lauren?
I just think that, sorry, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just think that the motion should include the total interest charge then for the 3 years.
Are you prepared to make that motion?
Yeah, sure, I will move that Lethbridge County, what I better look back here and see what it says.
Mr. Chairman, maybe we could say up to 1,500, but I don't actually know the total. It would just be to a maximum of $10,000.
Pay the interest up to. Yeah.
Are you
Okay,
okay
okay.
with that?
Yep. The county would proceed with the loan interest up to a maximum of $1,500 for the 3-year loan for this project. Is that a good enough motion?
Administration? Okay, all right. Lauren has moved that the county council support the loan application for the total amount of the interest for the 3-year period up to $1,500. Okay. Any further discussion? Call for the question. Those in favor? Anyone opposed? That is carried.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jen. On to correspondence. SouthGrow Grants Advising Program? Oh, I guess this is just on me to read this, right? Okay. Has everybody had a chance to review the correspondence from SouthGrow, and are there any questions? Yes, Cole?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So SouthGrow has actually reached out as well to have a delegation in October at one of the council meetings to present the program and go through it in more detail and answer any questions council may have at that time as well, so.
Perfect. Thank you, Cole. Any questions arising from correspondence? Seeing none, we'll move on. No new business. We're on to H, closed sessions. We have 2 items under the closed sessions, remunerations. or FOIP Section 19, confidential evaluations, and the CIA report, FOIP Section 16, 17, 23, and 24. Can I entertain a motion to move into closed session? Lauren? Lauren has moved to, we move into closed session. Call for the vote. so we have the one item coming out of close that needs to be addressed. How would you like to proceed? Mark?
I would make a motion to have administration authorized to move forward on negotiations for the land purchase.
Okay, Lauren has made a motion to direct council to move forward in negotiations on land purchase. Any further discussion? Call the question, those in favor? Anybody opposed?